in the 500 lot area. It's not a designated heritage resource, so therefore it's not protected under the Heritage Preservation Bylaw. Its demolition is considered an as of right under the Zoning and Development Bylaw. However, there's a section 3.4 of the Heritage Bylaw, which includes the ability to request that council impose a temporary designation on a resource with characteristics that may meet the criteria for designation. That would prevent the building from being demolished or otherwise altered for a period of 45 days to allow council time to determine if council would proceed with the process to designate it as a heritage resource. So Heritage Board's being asked if the board feels there's sufficient need to request that council impose a temporary designation on the property. So after a review of the historical background of the property, it was the opinion of staff that it was not necessary to request a temporary designation. A reconsideration of the decision to approve the demolition permit is now being requested by an area resident, and an appeal to IRAC has been filed. As a result, Heritage Board's being asked if they feel the property should be recommended to council for temporary designation or not. The site is the southwest corner of the block that's bounded by Richmond Street, Hensley Street, Grafton Street, and Hillsborough Street. It's near the center of the city between Queen Square and Hillsborough Square, an area that would have been populated early in the city's history. The area is dominated by a number of large historic churches, Trinity Church, Zion, St. Paul's, and the Murphy Center, Polyclinic, and the rest of the area is typically simple wood frame housing and a few residential brick buildings. The area has seen some transformation in recent years with the development of a 4-story mixed-use building on the corner of Grafton and Prince Street. 231 Richmond Street is a 2-story wood frame building which dates to somewhere around 1900. It's on the north side of Richmond Street at the east corner of Hensley. It's owned and operated by the PEI Housing Corporation, and it's been vacant for a number of years. The building lacks in terms of upgrading to current standards, and it's reached a condition where occupancy is not viable. The 1878 panoramic view clearly shows a different building on this corner, indicating that the current structure is post-1878. By 1917, the GOAT insurance map shows the existing building is in place, and the building outline appears to not have changed much since that time, with a main rectangular section fronting on Richmond Street and an extension protruding into the rear yard. Hensley Street was one of the city's first subdivisions when Charles Hensley subdivided his property in 1843 and created Hensley Street, previously Grafton Lane and also known as Davy Lane. The former Hickey Nicholson tobacco factory dominated the area and has now been converted to a residential building. There's a fairly high concentration of designated heritage properties in the area, shown here in red. They include Queen Square, Hillsborough Square, Trinity Church, St. Paul's, the former Notre Dame Convent property, now Sydney Boutique Hotel, as well as a number of smaller residential buildings. Heritage building evaluation of 231 Richmond Street, undertaken in 2007, resulted in a fairly low score at a grade 3 level, grade 1 being the highest and anything below a grade 3 being ineligible for designation. If it were to be evaluated again now, it's expected the score would indeed be lower given the deteriorated state of the building. The assignment of an evaluation classification comes from a fairly robust national system that's been adopted by the National Historic Site Services as well as most levels of governments that regulate heritage provisions. It involves basic criteria such as architecture, history, environment, usability, integrity, and more detailed criteria such as style, construction, etc. It's a robust system, but it serves really only as a guide. The official plan outlines goals, objectives, and policy in reference to heritage resources. Our policy identified in section 3.71 is to designate additional properties which qualify as heritage resources. Further, in section 4.2.33, the Environment for Change stipulates buildings on properties graded as level 1 should be the priority for designation. 231 Richmond Street supports the streetscape and the character of the area, but is not of high historic value in its own right. It was occupied by a number of individuals associated with the railway, and it's located in the 500 lot area. It's suggested this is not considered a priority for designation. For interest only, and just to complete the picture, a new residential development is proposed for the site. This project is subject to the design standards of the 500 lot area and the design review process. This process is intended to ensure the development is suitable and supportive to the character of the 500 lot area. In conclusion, staff is recommending there's no need to request that council impose a temporary designation at 231 Richmond Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report, Todd. And I realized when we approved the minutes, I don't know if I had said that it was moved by Councillor Beck and seconded by Tara Maloney. I wasn't sure if you had gotten that or not, Ellen. Okay, thank you. And I also was remiss in introducing our newest board member. My apologies. Did you want to just take a second and introduce yourself to us folks? Yeah, maybe we'll just all do that. And I apologize as I come in late and, so yeah, we'll let you start.
Okay, good afternoon. And I'm a resident here on Oliver Street, and very pleased to be joining the Heritage Board.
And I think it's great that we have young people like Lucas lining up. He served 2 terms on the Youth Advisory Board, and here he is again, making a contribution to the city. So thanks for that, Lucas. We appreciate that. I'm Norman Beck, and I'm a councillor for Ward 3.
Aaron Stafford, resident member and an architect here in Charlottetown.
And I am Alana Yenkoff, City Councillor for Ward 1, Deputy Mayor, and Chair of the Planning and Heritage Committee.
And I am Tara Maloney. I work in interior design, and I've been a resident member for quite a few years on Heritage Board. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharon Larder, and I've been on this board many years ago, and I've just come off the Planning and Design Board. I'd worked for Parks Canada for years, looking after the historic sites, so I'm happy to be here.
I'm Todd Saunders. I'm the Heritage Officer here.
And down in the corner is our CAO, Eleanor Mohammed. Yeah. Welcome, Lucas. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
So back to the report. Thank you again, Todd, for your report. And I can open it up to, if anyone has any questions for me, and if I'm not able to answer them, I can redirect them either to Todd or to our CAO. So go ahead, Councillor Beck.
Yeah. I guess I'm just, thank you for that, Todd, your presentation. I'm wondering, what's the nature of the IRAC appeal? Like, what are they looking to do? They're coming to us where the request seems to be for a deferral of 45 days. What's the nature of the IRAC appeal, and does that have any impact on what we ultimately decide here? Like, I don't know whether one trumps the other, or one super. Oh, sorry, I should have run that through the chair. So, yeah, is there anything on the what's? I guess I have kind of 2 questions. One is, what's the nature of that appeal, and secondly, what impact does that decision, whatever it renders, what decision does that or impact does that have coming back on our discussions here, or our discussions moot at this point? I'm just wondering.
Thank you, Councillor Buck, for your 2 questions. similar questions that I have as well. And perhaps we can ask Todd for some clarification. And to add to that clarification, I'm pretty sure that Heritage Department's recommendation is for us to not put a temporary designation on it. But Todd, are you able to elaborate on the two questions from Councillor Beck?
I can give it a try, and it may be that CAO Mohammed might be able to help me out. There's two things in play. One is a reconsideration to council on the decision for the demolition permit, and there's also an appeal filed with IRAC. Those are really both through the zoning and development bylaw, and they both really refer to the demolition permit that's been issued. Our lawyer did suggest that we just ensure that the opinion of Heritage Board in terms of a temporary designation prior to dealing with those, with both the reconsideration and the appeal.
Thank you, Todd. So if I hear you correctly, this has come to Heritage Board through a recommendation of City's legal counsel, just to ensure that the Heritage Board is in agreement that it does not need a temporary heritage designation. Is that correct?
That is correct. Alternatively, they could decide, the board could decide that they do want to impose a temporary designation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Councillor
so
Beck.
just so I'm clear, so the decision is, or the request is basically the same of IRAC that it is of us? They're asking, you were saying reconsideration of the decision, that's us. Are they asking the same thing of IRAC to reconsider or to reverse? Sorry, Madam
Yep.
Chair.
I think we'll, thank you, Councillor Beck. I think we'll defer to Todd for that clarification.
Thank you. The appeal to IRAC is to cancel or revoke the demolition permit. And the request, I guess, is essentially the same, to revoke the demolition permit that's been issued. Those are both happened through the zoning and development bylaw. But our legal counsel just wants clarification whether this board would want to impose a temporary designation on the property or not.
Thanks. So just for clarification for myself and I guess also for new members then, so because it was not designated prior or is not designated, this Heritage Board has not seen and did not have to approve the demolition that was already granted. Is that correct?
That's correct. Any other questions on this?
Yeah, I have another one, sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Beck.
So I guess I'm just trying to play this out. Let's say we decide not to reconsider and give 45 more days, because really what's being asked of us is not, we've already said demolish it, because we already approved that, right? Under the previous meeting.
I believe this was an as of right demolition. It
Sure.
didn't come to
Okay.
council, nor did it come to any of the standing committees. This was an as of right under the zoning and development bylaw. So the lawyer for the city is just asking us to ensure that we have all of our ducks in a row, to make sure that this board doesn't want to give it a temporary designation. Now, based on the report we were given and the Heritage Department's recommendation to not give it the designation because of all of the reasons they outlined, the poor condition it's in, the low score that it had, the anticipation that the score would be even lower if they were to reevaluate it again.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's here. And so if this board goes against planning or Heritage Department's recommendation, then I think it would have to go on to council, because we're going against the Heritage boards or Heritage staff's recommendation.
Right. Yeah, and I get all that. I guess I'm wondering, the point that I'm wondering about is if we say let's not reconsider anything here. Let's just say go ahead. And then IRAC comes back, and I don't know how this works, but if IRAC comes back and said you cannot demolish that building, like they're requesting to not have the building demolished. So if IRAC comes back and says you cannot demolish that building, and we go ahead and order or say, listen, we're not going to reconsider the previous decision or discussion, where does that put us? Like, are we going ahead and doing something before
I'm going to
a
give this,
decision by IRAC has been made?
I'll give this one a try. What's before the board today is to ask the Heritage Board if we want to impose a temporary designation on the property.
I know that.
Todd has shared with us some of the history that's gotten us to here, but our decision has nothing to do with the reconsideration or the demolition. This is to whether or not we want to impose a designation on the property while the appeal is going through. Is that correct, Todd?
That's my understanding.
So the only decision for us to make today is whether or not we want to put a temporary designation on a property.
Well, I have is about IRAC and who has the ultimate say here. Does say it goes to the appeal, and I don't know how long that appeal takes. Does that take months? Is it in the queue? Where is it? I don't know. So for me, it's kind of a bit of a hanging fire in the sense that I don't know where that is or what influence that has on our decision. I understand what's being asked of us. They're asking us to put in a temporary designation, which is basically effectively delaying the demolition for 45 days, correct? While it's being looked at. Or am I missing something here?
I think the demolition, and Todd, maybe you could answer this, the demolition, I think, is on hold because of the reconsideration and the appeal regardless. Am I correct? Or would the demolition proceed while it weaves its way through IRAC?
I'm not 100% clear, but my understanding is that you're correct.
Madam Chair, I think to possibly answer the question, I think, so the individual who is filing the appeal with IRAC has not made the request to our board to designate it. That has been an internal request within the city staff, is that correct? So it's not
That's
the
correct.
appellant who's appealing IRAC asking us to designate this building? It's city asking us to kind of designate it or not designate it as almost a supporting document. Is that?
Right. So, right, the city's solicitor is wanting the Heritage Department and the Heritage Board to ensure that they have looked at this building and did not see it to be deemed to be a temporary heritage designation. But the IRAC appeal and the reconsideration will continue onward, no matter what decision we make here. And I believe the demolition is on hold until the reconsideration and the appeal is completed. Is that right, Todd?
That's my understanding.
That's kind of what I was wanting to know. Is one contingent on the other, or does it impact us in any way? So I think I'm clear. I just have one other quick question. The new project that was being proposed, just to make sure I'm correct, that I remember correctly, is affordable housing project, right?
Yes, the provincial government owns that property, and it's their project.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I might note, a lot of times when there's appeals going on, developers can continue on with their project, and they run the risk that if they lose in their appeal. But does that usually happen with with a demolition? Like if someone's appealing a demolition, can a developer continue on with that in hopes that they win the appeal? Todd?
Eleanor, can you speak to that? I've never dealt with a demolition.
That I'm not sure. My understanding is the same as yours.
But either way, it's not going to be contingent on anything that we decide here today. Okay. Any other questions on this really clear file?
I would just like to add that I agree with the recommendation by the Heritage Board. I don't think this building is significant. I think it's the style of the building is one that we have many of them in the city. We have a inventory already. That's nothing against this building, but it's in disrepair. Its owners don't want to repair it, and if it was one of a kind or something really architecturally remarkable, I'd lead the parade, but I don't see that on this building. I don't think it warrants designation.
Thank you, Tara. Any other questions? If not, I guess we can, somebody, if they want to put a resolution on the floor to accept staff's recommendation or not, I'll put that out there to you folks.
Might want to just repeat what the recommendation is, just so we're all.
So the Heritage staff's recommendation is to not impose a 45-day heritage designation on this property.
Right. I'll move that.
Thank you, Councillor Beck, and seconded by Tara Maloney. All those in favor of accepting staff's recommendation? Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, motion carried. So Todd, that means that because we accepted Heritage staff's recommendation, it finishes here, or does it move on to council?
It's done here.
Okay, so this is all done. Great, thanks, everybody. Okay, any new business? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Tara, seconded. Okay, all those in favor? Great, thank you, everybody.